In the summer of 1977, the very week I turned 8, I was plucked from my home in the great city of Boston and transplanted to Los Angeles, smack dab in the middle of the quintessential suburban enclave of the San Fernando Valley. Now, a child's world is small, and I was the nascent pebble cast into the pond, but the ripples had yet to move outward in the concentric rings that would grow and widen until they became my reality, my own life experience. My father, then 33, had accepted a job that had taken us to the West Coast. We were a small family, and now it was just my mom, dad, and me. And there was Uncle Chuck, my mom's brother. In 1977, he was 25 and had been in LA for a couple of years working as an actor, along with his dancer-actress girlfriend, Wendy. He was the only family we had in Los Angeles, and we visited him regularly. Chuck and Wendy lived in a small apartment in Hollywood, just over the hill, as we Valley people refer to anything on the other side of the Santa Monica Mountains, the low range of hills that separates us from the rest of LA and the Pacific Ocean. There are several ways to get over the hill from the valley, but only one goes straight into the pulsing heart of Hollywood, Laurel Canyon Boulevard. So every visit to Uncle Chuck's included a ride on this narrow canyon road. Observing from the back seat of my father's Oldsmobile prior to him becoming a Cadillac man, I would observe as we would wend and wind our way through the circuitous canyon, eventually hitting Sunset Boulevard at the bottom of the grade. We turn right and drive about a mile to Larrabee, and there was Chuck's apartment, a tiny one-bedroom off of Larrabee, tucked up in the Hollywood Hills, looking down onto the roof of the Whiskey A Go-Go. But as I said, a child's world is small, so how at 8 years old could I understand that I was moving through the aorta at the very heart of the 70s zeitgeist? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll surrounded me on every trip through the canyon, yet this was simply where my uncle lived with his woman and his Great Dane, and Laurel Canyon was just another street with some cool houses. Never mind that I was cruising by the homes once or currently occupied by legends such as Frank Zappa, Jim Morrison, the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, Joni Mitchell. Even Houdini was rumored to reside in a castle-like compound somewhere in the canyon's dark shadows. The ripples of my world had not yet come to know these names or faces, nor the many other ghosts that resided on the streets of the canyons. But I would wonder who lived up there. Who lived on these crooked storybook streets like Lookout Mountain, Crescent Drive, and Wonderland Ave? Wonderland. Now that is a good name for a street that snakes its way up into the secret recesses of the Hollywood Hills. And it also happens to serve as the titular avenue in director James Cox's accounting of the four-on-the-floor murders that took place on that very street in the summer of 1981. Not since the Manson murders had there been such a notorious canyon killing, both occurring in the Los Angeles hills on warm summer nights. But this time, our central figure was none other than Johnny Wad, a.k.a. John Holmes, a.k.a. the King of Porn. In Cox's 2003 movie, Val Kilmer plays Holmes at his sniveling, whining, doughy-eyed, dysregulated best. His glory days behind him, Holmes now exists on a steady diet of coke and sex with his underage, enamored girlfriend Dawn, as they eke out their volatile way through the hardscrabble streets of LA in the early 80s. And like all addicts and desperate people, Holmes eventually gets in too deep with the wrong crew. In this case, the Wonderland Gang, the ramshackle residents of a rented townhouse located at 8763 Wonderland Avenue, high in the Hollywood Hills. Led by the unstable Ron Lanius, the rest of the crew consisted of David Lind, Billy Deverell, and Deverell's girlfriend, Joy. What happens next may as well be considered a series of really, really bad choices on behalf of Holmes, but such is the curse of the desperate. Acting as a go-between for the unstable Lanius and notorious LA club owner and gangster Eddie Nash, Holmes attempts to sell Nash some antique guns owned by Lanius. Let's just say that things don't go exactly as planned, and now Holmes finds himself needing to work his way back into the good graces of Lanius's crew. Holmes' street cred has waned considerably, his 13.5-inch cock notwithstanding, and he helps the Wonderland Gang plan and execute a brazen robbery of Eddie Nash. But Eddie knows better and soon has Holmes at his mercy and forces the King of Porn to lead them to the townhouse on Wonderland on the evening of July 1st, 1981. What ensued was a bloody massacre. 4 dead, including Lanius, Deverell's girlfriend Joy, and David Lynn's girlfriend Barbara Richardson. Ron Lanius' wife, Susan, was severely attacked but survived. What James Cox is able to capture in his movie is an authentic and manic romp that kept me feeling as high and confused as the film's central characters. A gory he said, she said, Cox keeps us guessing just like his LA detectives Sam Nico and Louis Cruz. We don't know whom to believe, and frankly, I feel more comfortable not knowing. At least I have some plausible deniability in the whole thing. Now, Wonderland gang member David Lynn, played at his 80s biker best by Dylan McDermott, was not present the night his bros and his girl were beaten to death with lead pipes, and much of the first part of the movie goes to his take on the night in question. He knows it was Nash and that Holmes had set up the Wonderland gang, and we may even believe him until we hear Holmes' side of it. Sure, he was involved, but he certainly wasn't there during the murders, right? Perhaps the one believable version belongs to Sharon Holmes, John's estranged wife, played subtly and stoically by Lisa Kudrow. Did her husband show up at her house in the middle of that July night, disoriented in tears and covered in blood? Yeah, probably so. But to this day, the murders remain unsolved. Holmes was never proved to be there that night, and he was acquitted. 6 years later, he was dead from AIDS. Nash's trial ended in a hung jury, 11-1? Well, the RICO statute caught up with him in 2001, but by then he was a septuagenarian emphysemic who only spent about 4 years in the Stony Lonesome on federal charges for drug trafficking, money laundering, and bribing that juror. Listen, Cox doesn't provide any answers, but really, come on, we know what happened, right? What he does do is set the stage with smart and gritty production design, turns up the manic mayhem, and lets his actors loose. Kilmer is brilliantly pathetic as Holmes, whose emotional maturity is tantamount to the size of his schwang. The great Tim Blake Nelson serves as the perpetually stoned ballast, Billy Deverell, to the volatile Ron Lonnie, played to disarmingly unpredictable perfection by Josh Lucas. Eric Bogosian shows up in his hirsute best as Eddie Nash, and you can't have a gritty whodunit if you don't have Ted Levine as the gritty and perpetually beleaguered detective, in this case LA's own Sam Nico. Wonderland is a great movie about terrible people doing horrible things to each other. But it is due to Cox's steady turn behind the wheel that the movie manages to withhold judgment. Instead, it serves as a demarcation point where the great wave of sex, drugs, and rock and roll hit the cement breakwater of 80s conservatism in a bloody head-on collision that hot summer night up in the Hollywood Hills.
Nice job, Adam. Excellent job, man. I got to tell you. That is a really good intro. Joe, we're on fire, man, right? The last couple of weeks here.
Everyone's bringing their game here. Well done.
Thank you.
Around. Hey, listen, guys, before we get started, I want to remind our listeners that they can check out our interview with director James Cox and actor Tim Blake Nelson at thecuttingroompodcast.com, right next to this episode. It's an excellent interview. Adam and Max join me. Check it out. Guys, let's talk Wonderland. Adam, I got to tell you, what I think works in this movie, one of the many things that works in this movie, is a point that you brought up, that Cox withholds judgment here. Because you watch so many of these movies, especially where there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the truth, and Cox doesn't try to shove his opinion down, in my opinion anyway, down your throat. You know, he's basically just leaving it to the viewer to decide what might have happened or what could have happened by giving you this Kurosawa-esque way of storytelling with three different versions of the murder.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, no one's been brought up on charges. So anyone who's been brought up has been acquitted. So
yes,
technically speaking, yeah, there are no guilty parties that have been brought to light. So he stays out of that.
It's just one of those things, too, that we'll never probably know the truth. We'll never know who the Zodiac killer was. It's just amazing. I mean, and there's so many other. I mean, Max probably,
and that's Cox's opinion. I think is that you're not going to know the truth, and that all these people are basically full of shit.
Right. Yep. Oh, there you go. All right, Joe.
That's the point. The point isn't this isn't a whodunit where the point is getting to figure out who did it.
Right.
The point is the bullshit that all these these drug addicts or these whacked out dudes are friggin' slinging all over the
bunch
place.
Bunch of scumbags.
Right.
Yep. Telling their version that makes them look the best.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And I mean, there's so many great performances here, as you mentioned, Adam. And we had a chance to talk to Tim Blake Nelson,
Yes.
and I never really thought about how opposite, I mean, it's right there in front of you how the Lanius character and the Deverell character is as Tim Blake Nelson is playing Deverell, who's like just completely high on marijuana the whole time, whereas Josh Lucas's Lanius is just, snorting coke, like it's going out of style, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like polar opposites. That's a real good catch there too. So I'm assuming, Adam, by what you said, you really like this movie a lot, as do I.
Oh, definitely. I thought it was a solid film, solid performances, well directed, tells tells a great, ugly story, basically.
Right.
In a really, I think we talked about this with Cox, just the production design too, that captures that early 80s gritty sort of trying to define itself coming out of the 70s and heading into the Reagan era, and just that LA feeling like we talked about in the last episode with with the canyons, and
right.
just it nailed it. I thought he nailed it.
It's so funny because when we talked to James Cox, you brought that point up about you were all over the production design, and knowing now that in moving out there, in the 80s where there's kind of that leftover feel, because I think you said it during the interview, like he's got a what year is this, like 80 81 I guess
81.
It's
right.
81, and the 80s doesn't know what it wants to be yet.
Right.
So it's still got that 70s hangover feel, and they're, with all these, new devices and new looks and new fashion, but it's still got that 70s hangover feel. And you just rave about how Cox captures that, man.
Yeah, I think he does a great job with it, and just kind of captures that time and that, that little corner of Los Angeles up there in Laurel
soundtrack
Canyon.
Kicks ass.
The soundtrack is great, and also Cliff Martinez did the score, Joe.
That's so funny, man. It's such
hangovers. We're having a Cliff Martinez hangover here.
Yeah, it's so funny how this show weaves this weird web of.
Isn't it bizarre?
It's crazy
how things just work out like that, man. We're all connected. Well, Max is bringing the Hollywood Hills to the table. He picked these movies, and I mean, make no mistake about it, Max. I mean, this is your kind of story through and through.
Yeah.
True crime horror here. True crime horror, without a doubt.
Tom, that's great, because I consider this a horror film. I consider this equivalent, not on the grandest scale, because I'm very passionate about my Helter Skelter, but this was the Helter Skelter that killed the 70s. Helter Skelter killed the 60s. But out here in LA, this was like, and it's so funny though, because I was wholly unaware. I'd heard of the Wonderland murders, but ever since I saw this film, I have been obsessed. I have been trying to learn each and everything I possibly can, every nougat about this crime and these dynamics. Eddie Nash, you guys know that this dude was the biggest club owner in Los Angeles, and he created the first gay club out here where gay men could dance and kiss together.
Did not know that.
Wow.
But here's something else. In Adam's eloquent, gorgeous intro, he talks about 1977 coming out here. I don't even know if we've talked about this much, Adam, but I really identify it. You had Laurel Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
I had Topanga Canyon.
Yes.
And it was the same thing. Like every time I went through Topanga Canyon, I had those same feelings that you talk about in your intro. And the only movie I could ever compare anything to was The Fat Man. There was a tunnel that had Fat Man spray painted over it. And it was a tunnel through I guess Santa Monica Mountains, or the Malibu Mountains, really, that led you to the Pacific Ocean. And then the only film I could equate it to was Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty. Like that, he dies in that tunnel.
In that tunnel? Yeah. That's the same tunnel, Max?
And I remember seeing that on the Z channel, Heaven Can Wait, and watching it all the time. And I don't know, it just there's
for
something
for those people that are listening that aren't familiar with LA. Topanga Canyon is a windy canyon that goes out of the San Fernando Valley and it lands you right on Pacific Coast Highway in the heart of Malibu. And then, there's a series of canyons as you go further west, and you've got a number of them. And then Laurel goes straight into Hollywood, and then there's, they're all over the valley. There's the Santa Susana Pass, which goes the other direction, and that's where Manson, where Spawn Ranch was. So all very, like, Topanga Canyon was this enclave of just gypsies and hippies in the 60s and 70s, and still to this day has that vibe. They're really unique places. Yeah, really unique places. So yeah,
we're surrounded by iconography out here.
Yeah, it's apparent. Yeah, I mean, to hear you guys talk about it, it's really wonderful to listen to. It really is. I mean, I mean, Joe, you've been out there. I mean, obviously you haven't.
Not really.
But you've at least, it's caught your eye, right?
I haven't been.
When Joe was at my house with Adam, he was more California kid than we were. The dude was wearing fucking puka shells. He was tan. He was handsome. He's
a good-looking guy, Max. Yeah,
I couldn't believe how good-looking Joe was, and I'm straight, and I'm like, oh my god, he's really,
shut up.
He's really. Oh, you know what it is? He has that Mediterranean skin, and he's really tan, and like he's just so. Oh my god, look at his teeth.
I was in a very good place when I visited you because I had been vacationing for a week. I was back in a place that I had, that I really loved. I do like California. I don't like LA, to be honest with you. But I haven't driven on all these roads that they're talking about. Like, I don't know what they're talking about. To me, when you guys are talking about the canyons and stuff, I think of David Lynch and.
Mulholland Drive.
Appropriately so.
Yeah, and that's
Lost
all
Highway.
that. There's just, it's, God, there was at the top of all of these canyons, sort of at the crest that runs along the top of the Santa Monica Mountains, is Mulholland Drive. Okay. And there is just, there is an energy up there. Back in high school, it's still there, I think. There's an old Nike missile base that's tucked away down this dirt road that was put in there during World War II to protect the coast from potential Japanese subs. And by the time I was in high school in the mid 80s and even early college, late 80s, it's just like this defunct thing that was a missile base. But if you knew where it was, you could go there and you could climb up this old metal ladder up to the top, and you just lay out there and look at the stars and look out over the city. And it was just a mystical, spiritual place with unusual energy. And it's still that way up there. It's just a strange little area.
Wow.
I wrote a biker play in my early 20s. I wrote it in Sonoma Wine Country that Adam directed, and it'd be a bunch of actors, and we're all dressed up as bikers, and we're all going up into the Hollywood Hills, hanging out. You remember that, Adam?
I do.
I mean, it's so remember when. I mean,
Wow.
Seriously, these films just bring so much nostalgia, out of me as an Angelino. And I'm sure, Adam has much more of an affection for his past in Boston than I do mine from Lansing. I could give a fuck about Lansing, but
you're from Michigan, right?
Yeah.
That's when did you move out? Around the same time.
Yeah, it was like 77.
So here's a question, and I was going to include this in my intro, and it's kind of what we're talking about now is I have found lately, and maybe it's just I'm at that age, but it's a strange thing where I am nostalgic for a time or an experience that I actually didn't have directly. Like I said at the beginning of the opening there, it's like I drive over the canyon, and to me that was just a street. I have no idea who's living there, but like now I'm nostalgic. The fact I was there, but I wasn't connected to it, but I'm still nostalgic for that environment that I didn't really truly live in. So I'm asking a question. Can you be nostalgic for an experience that you didn't necessarily directly live?
I think it's possible, only because, and look, I haven't seen the area that you guys are talking about, but when we were talking about Bret Easton Ellis last week, it's like watching, or reading things about LA, like watch it, like say I saw Less Than Zero, when I was a young man, like, my early teens. And then, I think, then you rewatch, say, like, then you watch films like this, and I get nostalgic about Less Than Zero. Now, I've never been out to Los Angeles, but I think, more so in your sense, Adam, like I could
Is it a cinematic experience that you're saying,
Yeah, I think
Adam?
he is saying that. I'm trying to turn it into that, but
No, I mean it's almost like like I'm at my uncle's apartment, and for all I know, the band could have been playing at the Whiskey Beneath them. It's like it was too late for the Doors, but Crosby, Stills, Nash might have been playing there that night, and I was.
Well, you feel the history of a place,
even though I wasn't really in. Like I was telling Max the other day, there's a little amphitheater that's a few miles from where we live, also in the hills, just a different area. And in fact, Max's wife actually even sang at the Starlight Amphitheater. It's like a little outdoor, not even that little. It's like I don't know, 1,200 seat amphitheater. And in 1978, apparently Bob Marley and Peter Tosh reunited and had a concert there.
wow.
And it's like I didn't even know this until like a couple weeks ago. And it's like, but I'm still nostalgic for the fact that was a time that I was there.
I think I know what you're saying. I feel that often in New York, actually.
Sure,
as a kid, as someone who was born in New York,
you get that. See, I don't get that kind of power. That's pretty powerful stuff that you could, like, you feel the legends that.
Well, I feel I feel connected to the place, and I feel I feel the power and the energy that's preceded me and that produced me. Really, what I mean?
I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that I can feel that, and it's now almost a sense of nostalgia. But nostalgia for something that I personally
didn't attend. Yeah,
I'll tell you, man.
Go on, Joe. No,
I was just gonna say I was showing my kids The Godfather the other night for the first time. It was very great. And then some of that stuff at the wedding and stuff like that. All my family's older now, whatever. So. But that, like, it was definitely giving me nostalgia for stuff that I didn't really.
Right.
Yeah.
But, wait, whoa, Joe! You showed your kids The Godfather?
I tried. They fell asleep.
No.
They fell asleep.
Well, they're not ready yet.
How old are your kids,
no,
Joe?
They're not ready. We were very tired. It was late. It was
Joe's like, hey, it's midnight. Let's watch The Godfather.
Yeah, why would you show your kids The Godfather at midnight, Joe?
Well, it wasn't
That's
midnight,
a 5
but it was
p.m. at the latest.
Yeah. Hey, Max, let me ask you a question, because you said something kind of interesting.
I did?
Yeah, you did, yes. It intrigued me without a doubt, because it was really cool, actually. You said that the Helter Skelter murders kind of like ended the 60s, right? Or what did you? It was something like that. Whereas the Wonderland murders ended the 70s. So would the O.J. Simpson murders
killed the 80s?
Yeah, killed the 80s.
Yeah. That was our last really big. I mean, I tried to think beyond that. Robert Blake, it didn't have the impact. The O.J. murders were really the last level of Helter Skelter Wonderland O.J.
Right.
We'll get another one. It's a guarantee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's very insightful, Max. I dig that. Speaking of insight, we're going to bring in Jeremy Garcia, Max. So you're going to get your wish.
I'm so excited.
He's last week, Max, I think, ended the show with, get Jeremy Garcia. We have like 2 minutes left of the show, Max. Get
Where
the head
are you?
of Jeremy Garcia.
Jeremy, where are you?
I'm right here.
No, but like, where are you geographically?
Oh, I live in Ohio, particularly Kent, Ohio.
Okay, Kent? That's not near Akron, right?
No, that's very close to Akron, actually.
Okay.
Jeremy, are you very nervous right now because you're talking to the Max Cook?
He's fine.
I'm not nervous because, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not nervous at all. I too use booty butt wipes, so I think I understand where
they're like the gold
Max,
standard, man.
Yeah.
Max, is it weird talking to somebody who knows way more about you than you know about him?
Well, the fact that he brought up the booty butt wipes, I'm honored. I'm almost crying.
Like, listen to this kid. Watch here. We'll get it going for you, Max. What's Max's real name?
Jeff.
Jesus. Now it's getting weird. Do you wear Target brand PJ bottoms, or are you wearing like blown out undie pants? Like what? Because we're about to get into What's Up Rockers with young boys. So what are you wearing?
I'm wearing a pair of jeans, and
you got to take off the jeans. It's too late.
Take off the jeans and tell us. And here's a good cutting room trivia question for you, Jeremy. As you're taking off your jeans, what's Max's wife's name?
If he knows this, I'm gonna lose this. He's probably friends with her on Facebook.
All right.
He's really taking off.
Where'd he go? Is he there?
Come on,
Taking his pants off.
Stop looking it up online, Jeremy. What's Max's wife's name? Her first name. If you don't get it, I'm throwing you off. That's
you
it.
better
Get rid of him.
What about what kind of dogs does Max have?
Her name is Nicole and Pugs, I think.
Oh my God! You better not have a bowl of cereal on your nightstand that's been there for 4 hours.
No, that's my nightstand, Max.
With a cigarette in it.
I don't put my cigarettes out my cereal bowls. Come on,
Jeremy.
Yeah, Max.
How was the Blues Brothers? How many times have you seen it?
I've seen it about. Oh God, I don't even know. I've seen it a lot. It was one of my favorite movies growing up.
Does he sound hollow?
he suddenly yes.
You were very clear before, and now
well, once you told him to take off his pants, he started to sound different for some reason.
Yeah.
Do I sound better now? Hold on.
No, keep fucking with it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
There we
So Jeremy, can you believe Dan Aykroyd in that film?
Oh, he's great. I love him in that movie.
What is it about his performances? Yeah, let me rephrase the question. What is it about Elwood Blues's mystique that Aykroyd creates in that performance? He creates a mystique, doesn't he?
He really does. Like, it's weird because with most comedy film characters, you kind of you get them right off the bat. You're like, okay, this guy's a dummy. This guy's the smartass. With him, he just has this weird mystery to him that always fascinates.
He's very dry, like the toast he eats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very dry and he's very direct. And here's the thing, he's really confident. Like in every scene that Dan Aykroyd is in as Elwood, he's confident from the beginning, from explaining to his brother why he sold the Bluesmobile to the end of the movie where he's talking to that chick and asking her out on a date at the gas station. He is exercising extreme confidence, and that's part of the reason why that character works so well. And Dan Aykroyd does it well, man.
Yeah, he's particularly confident behind the wheel. Like he's just like, "Yep, I got this. I am Elwood. I'm a better driver than you." And it's great.
Did he take like driving courses? Because it really is so believable that Aykroyd's driving through the whole thing.
Why are they so calm when they're driving through that mall? Like he's really calm. Right?
Okay.
New Oldsmobiles are in early this year.
Pier 1 Imports.
Hey, you sleaze. That's my bed.
Disco pants and haircuts.
Yeah, Blues Brothers, Donnie Darko, and Gus Van Sant's Elephant were my three favorite films when I was about 13.
Wow.
And you're how old now?
I'm 21.
God, that's so young. So as a 21-year-old, you're looking at the state of the world. You're looking at ISIS. You're looking at Russia. You're looking at Ukraine. You're looking at all of these terrible, terrible things. Are you long for the world? Are you fearful? Are you worried?
Well, all that stuff is definitely disconcerting and tragic and upsetting. But I don't know. I try to look at the positives. Like
teach me, Jeremy. Teach me to look at the positives. As a young man today, teach me.
Well, you see, I have lots of gay friends, and and seeing how the LGBT community has really made strides and how they've gotten
now just so our listeners know, LGBT stands for
lesbian, gay, transgendered, all that.
That's your world.
Well, that's not necessarily my world. I just have a lot of friends that.
And he's saying that they're progress, like that community is progressing.
Oh,
And I
that's
like
so good. I'm
that.
glad that they are progressing.
Yeah, he's that to him, instead of thinking about all these horrors around the globe, he's like, well, you know what? I'm going to take a look at the at this and see how that is now getting better, which is a great way to. I can't look at things like that. I go for the worst. I go for the jugular.
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm an incredibly pessimistic person most of the time, but
Right.
but
You have to be to listen to us.
well, yeah. I mean, like the Antichrist review is one of my favorites. So,
Ah!
I mean, you gotta be a little bit weird to really dig something like that. But it's interesting. I'm a pretty pessimistic person, but I try my best to stay positive.
I think the key word there, Max, is try.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tries. See, I don't try when it comes to shit like that. I just get negative, God,
maybe
sucks.
it's just the bright-eyed innocence of youth that's kept me Mr. Positive here. I don't know.
Well, I want to get back to the whole gay, lesbian, transgender thing. Jeremy, do you mind if I ask if this is your world? Are you one of those folks?
Oh, no. I just have a lot of friends, and I had friends that got bullied growing up. And, I grew up in this town where there are a bunch of, like, dumb redneck people. So if you were friends with gay people, you were called, like, a fag and beaten up
that's
or whatever.
heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking.
Ugh.
And, transgender people and gay people and lesbian people are some of my very favorite people. And I think they're so pure, and I think they're wonderful, and I'm really sorry that they have suffered verbal abuse from ignorance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a very low tolerance for just ignorance in general, but that particular type of ignorance. Like, growing up around, like, a bunch of those, like, dumb redneck people, there were so many,
Right.
like, you're Colombian, you have the cocaine, right? Like, there's so many of those.
Oh, my God.
I hear you, Jeremy, and I have a low.
But I'm also guilty of that myself.
I have a
Colombian.
Yeah, I have a low. You're right. I have a low tolerance for ignorance myself. I mean, and trust me, it takes a lot to tolerate Joe Christiana, on this show. So I totally get what you're saying.
You're a very forgiving man, Tom.
Jeremy, do you like Joe's reviews, or does he?
I love Joe's reviews.
Is there anything about Joe that gets on your nerves?
Oh God!
Not really. There's really nothing about you guys that really get on my nerves. I posted a pretty big comment on the last episode, but it wasn't that you got on my nerves. I just wanted to get give my perspective as a millennial, seeing as you were talking about spring breakers and millennials.
Yes,
and
I heard that show, Jeremy. I heard it just today, and I was rolling my eyes through the whole show.
Max dug
because of Tom's rant.
Yeah, Max. Yeah, well, it's not. I don't know. I don't know, man. You guys got on me, dude.
Tom sounded like he was 70 years old. He sounded like fucking.
I was trying to balance that out. I was trying to balance that equation out, Max, but he wasn't letting me get in a word.
It was fucking Gran Torino starring Jetlaw.
You don't work with these people, Max. You don't.
I did work with those people when I worked with those people.
When you were 21.
No, not 21. Well, into my 30s, I was a fucking server. Thank you.
All right.
Not the only suffering server in the world, Tom.
Oh God. Well, that's good to know.
Jeremy, how do you make money?
Wow, Jeremy, you went crazy on this friggin'.
What does he say, Joe? Read it.
Is it long? All right.
It's longer than my review for What's Up Rockers.
Just read it, Joe.
Right.
I didn't go crazy. I just wanted to give my personal perspective.
Just read it. Joe's going to read it.
Very interesting episode. I'd like to
Why do you
address
have
a
to
couple
read it in
things.
the voice?
All right. I'd like to address a couple of things. This is just a suggestion of an interesting sci-fi film, Upstream Color by Shane Carruth.
Okay.
It's a fascinating and beautiful film that is a little opaque, but I felt it was ultimately emotionally rewarding and intellectually stimulating.
Okay, well, hold on now. That's good. The sci-fi discussion was good. The Solaris discussion was good, right, Jeremy?
I loved getting into it with Dave on that Solaris discussion.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that was
great.
excellent. Billy and I had a discussion, and you and Dave had a discussion. No problems. Everything was fine. Continue.
Yeah, that really made me want to check out Soderbergh's Solaris, because I was kind of weary of it because I really liked the Tarkovsky film, but it made me want to give it a shot at least.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Tarkovsky movie since like 1997, so I don't remember it. So I meant to watch it for the show.
Still remembers the year you watched it.
Yeah. Go on, Joe.
All right. I recently had a Facebook rant about the subject of millennial bashing, and I personally feel that the oversimplification of just saying my generation is sex-obsessed addicts is a little unfair.
Dude, he's digging at me, Joe.
Yes, he is. My generation, in many ways, is one of the more intelligent generations.
Ah!
Just looking at how hey, and Jeremy, I'm behind you on this.
Oh,
man. I
don't do that, Joe.
Well, he's allowed to do what he wants.
He's his job right
You
now.
see how he gets on me, Mac? All right.
He's an asshole. He's awesome.
Go on, Joe.
Just looking at how hard my generation has worked and fought for the rights of the LGBT community, something past generation have been violently against.
Sexual community.
That to me shows a generational strength, determination, and intelligence, as well as individualism. Well, yeah, hey, dude, I don't know that a generation can take claim. Like my mother's always trying to take claim that her generation was the best. They were hippies, and then then look what they did in the '80s. So I don't know if I buy. I don't know if I buy all that. But
I mean, generation sucks, Joe. It just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah, I mean, look, civil liberties started a long time. This is what I tell my mother. I was like, oh, so your generation freed the slaves? She's like, oh, it all started with us. You know, every generation thinks.
I can see that in retrospect. I don't know. I just saw the fact that it seems like the past couple years it's really started to take.
There have been great strides with gay rights for sure, but those, okay. Are you taking responsibility for that, Jeremy?
No. I guess that
sounds like he is.
Jeremy.
That point
sounds like
he's.
It sounds like he is to me, Joe.
That point was thought out. My bad.
But to his credit, I mean, they've made great strides currently. You know what I mean? But it has been building. Obviously, it's been going back since we had that discussion and the band played on from the '80s, they made they made a lot of progress in the '60s as well. So
Jeremy, do you live alone with your mommy?
Yeah, currently. I was planning on I kind of had like a series of like weird things happen that kind of threw me off, and I'm trying to work my way back into a good rhythm and get my own place and everything.
Good for you.
Wait a minute. I'm not sure what that means, but I just want you to know that I lived with my mother alone for many, many, many years, and she wasn't available because she had to work as an RN. So I don't know if you've ever heard the term latchkey kid.
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
But that was me. I was the kid with the chain around his neck,
Jeremy, this is an incredibly heartfort comment.
Can we continue the comment?
Okay, yeah. I was gonna try to skip through it, but it
just read it.
Okay, I'm trying. Okay, the whole it's very long. But okay,
Max is trying to do the.
I know, but he's right though, because this is what I'm just interjecting here because this is gonna play into his home situation.
Okay,
right.
Good.
By the same token, I understand just Tom's cynicism. With the infinite amount of distractions my generation has including cell phones, video games, social media, the internet in general, it has made things like reading Hemingway obsolete in their eyes. So now he's disconnecting himself from the generation because they're not literate. Okay. Plus, with YouTube and reality celebrities, it has made being famous seem like something anybody can do, which in my opinion has led to one, feeling that school isn't as important because you get famous so easily. Two, increased emphasis on beauty and appearance. Along with how ubiquitous advertising is in this country, the perceived importance of frivolous vanity seems such as Air Jordan sneakers has also risen. Because as we all know, there isn't advertisements for books. All right, Jeremy, you're fading there here. Okay, but here we go. You're getting back on track here. As someone who grew up in this generation, I also got the sense that the education system in this country is another issue. I have Asperger's syndrome, which is a mild form of autism.
Okay, all right. So that's all right. I was going to ask Jeremy to explain Asperger's real quick in case anybody didn't know, but it's a minor form of autism.
Yes.
Okay.
The teachers employed at the multiple schools I went to didn't know how to handle people with disabilities. One thing you shouldn't do with people with Asperger's is scream violently in their face like R. Lee Ermey in Full Metal Jacket.
All right. I'm sorry.
Well, that's not funny, Tom. That is incredibly insensitive.
What did he say, Joe?
I'm just thinking of Arlie Ermey, Joe. I can't help it. I didn't
Your
mean
days of finger banging Mary Jane rotten crotch through her pretty pink panties are over.
Thank you, Adam, for helping.
You're a modern art masterpiece.
All right, there's plenty here for. I mean, dude, you've had issues at school. Obviously, someone was screaming.
So hold on, yeah, but listen.
I know he's
being funny about it too. He's like somebody screaming in your face, like Arlie Ermey. I think, Jeremy, are you trying to be a little funny there?
Well, yeah, I mean,
his name isn't fucking Jeremy. It's Jeremy.
I said
Stop
Jeremy.
No, you keep calling him Jeremy, like he's covered in germs. It's Jeremy.
I said Jeremy.
Okay, thank you from the obsessive compulsive.
I'll explain that comment. My friend was taken out into the hall by this teacher, and the teacher
Hold
was
on
like,
a second. Wait, I'm going to let you go for in a second. They also were rude, cynical, and bitter, and would blatantly call students like me stupid and future failures.
Jesus.
What is that supposed to do for our generation?
That's not funny. Is that it?
Well, I'll get into that. This teacher took one of my friends out in the hallway and was talking to him and trying to give him like a little pep talk, and he was like you're smart. I mean, you're not you're not an idiot like that kid. And he was referring to me. And my friend told me, and I got mad and I went over and called him out. And then he got in my face and was screaming at me. And then I had a lot of teachers like that, and it really made going to school something I was like, I don't really want to do that. And it bothered me a lot, and it made me. I don't know. It hurt me a lot with my schooling, and like I was like, well, I already have my own problems, and now I have teachers saying that I'm gonna be nothing and I'm stupid. And it's like, well, why the fuck am I here? So I don't know.
I believe due to how poorly the teachers are paid and treated in this country has caused a great amount of anger and resentment. The anger has, in my opinion, trickled down to the students, has had a harmful impact. This is just me speaking from my experience, and this is just my opinion, mind you. But the fact that this was every school, 4 in total, I went to, really made me take pause. I would like to think I'm an intelligent person at age 21.
I think you are. Did you ever graduate high school?
Yeah, I graduated a year late because, because one, I was behind in my schoolwork, and then I had a bad period of depression where I just stopped going to school. So I didn't graduate initially, but then the next year I came in and I was really motivated, and I graduated, and I was like, yes. Now I'm not going to get beaten up because my friends threatened to beat me up if I didn't graduate. So I was like, well, I guess I got to graduate.
Those are some friends. Listen, fellas, we have a young man here who is intelligent. He loves cinema. He is locked in with the alternative sect of society. I like this kid.
I, like many other people my age, have tried using the internet as a resource and not just as a distraction. It's hard sometimes, and hell, as smart as I believe I am, I don't know how to tie my own shoes. Been told this is common with people with Asperger's, but meh. I understand the cynicism because that's how we've been portrayed in the media, and there are dumb people my age, no doubt. But that's the same with every generation, and in terms of music and film, well, the truly great stuff has always been less popular, with some great stuff bubbling up from time to time. My generation has had a real revival in punk rock and hip-hop music. It just isn't as popular. same as some bands like Bad Brains and Black Flag weren't huge when you guys were growing up. This is a great point, Jeremy, because you can't judge people by the mainstream. And the mainstream, by the way, everybody, is run by Generation X and baby boomers.
Okay, and that's all well and good, but even mainstream stuff in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where it was tolerable.
There was a short window when the mainstream was working because it wasn't. They didn't know how to rape the fuck out of it, the art, yet. Now they've figured out how to package it and sell it and shove it down your throat. There was a burst of music in the 50s and 60s and 70s because the industry didn't realize know how to exploit the art.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's why, if you look in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the popular stuff is the good stuff, right? Is that what you're saying? Like where
because because the industry didn't fucking just decimate it,
right?
Like
the Doors, they probably couldn't exist in a new world.
Bob Dylan, could you imagine Bob Dylan on American Idol? The greatest songwriter of the 20th century would have got booed up, wouldn't even got on the show.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, and when we were growing up, most of the mainstream stuff.
Off the show.
Yeah, I mean it's true. But again, dude, all you have to do is listen to KEXP in Seattle, and you could realize that there's great music being made every day. It just doesn't. Just mainstream sucks.
Okay, I will tell you this: for the past few weeks, I've been listening to the Princeton radio station, Joe, and listening to all the kids and their shows. And you're right, and Jeremy's right. I
listen to KEXP, and you know what? Listen to it regularly because it depends on when you tune in, what kind of music you get. But there's old guys, new guys.
Right.
These guys know music. You know what I mean? It's out there. You just got it. Just like Tim Blake Nelson was saying.
Has Jeremy seen Wonderland?
He has not seen Wonderland.
I have not seen Wonderland, and I haven't seen What's Up Rockers. I have seen a couple Larry Clark films, and I don't really know. I can't get a grasp on how I feel about
now, Jeremy, I'm just going to predict that the guys are going to talk about how uncomfortable they are with Larry Clark and his photography of young men. As a young man, do you think it's offensive or do you think it's artistic?
Hey, why don't I read my review?
Can we, Joe, finish that comment? Let Joe read his review, and then we'll continue this conversation. Is that
okay?
Cool? All right.
Yeah.
So finish. All right, finish, Joe.
All right, here we go. This is why I love this show, because you guys really challenge your audience to think. Thank you. As for me, I tried my hardest to be an example of the merits and positive side of my generation. And thankfully, I'm young, so I've got plenty of time to keep improving. Sorry for how long this was. I just thought it would be cool for you guys to see it coming from my point of view. Love the episode, guys. Signed, Cock and Mouth Generation, Cum Dumpster, the third AKA Jeremy.
Now, Jeremy, I just want you to know you could have just called me and told me all that.
Well, I don't know.
I'm only.
That would be weird, Tom.
Listen, just so you know,
Thomas Jetloff, I have a really long message for you.
Yeah, just pick up the phone, call me, and let me know how you're feeling. I'll listen anytime.
All right.
Listen, Adam, thank you for your awesome intro on Wonderland. Guys, thanks for talking about Wonderland. We're going to move on to Larry Clark and What's Up Rockers. I just want to send out one more reminder. You can check out our interview with Tim Blake Nelson and Wonderland director James Cox right next to this episode at the Cutting Room Podcast.com. Let's move on to What's Up Rockers. Joe Christiana is going to give the introduction. Joe, go!
Led by the unstable Ron Lanius, the rest of the crew consisted of David Lind, Billy Deverell, and Deverell's girlfriend, Joy. What happens next may as well be considered a series of really, really bad choices on behalf of Holmes, but such is the curse of the desperate. Acting as a go-between for the unstable Lanius and notorious LA club owner and gangster Eddie Nash, Holmes attempts to sell Nash some antique guns owned by Lanius. Let's just say that things don't go exactly as planned, and now Holmes finds himself needing to work his way back into the good graces of Lanius's crew. Holmes' street cred has waned considerably, his 13.5-inch cock notwithstanding, and he helps the Wonderland gang plan and execute a brazen robbery of Eddie Nash. But Eddie knows better and soon has Holmes at his mercy and forces the king of porn to lead them to the townhouse on Wonderland on the evening of July 1st, 1981. What ensued was a bloody massacre. 4 dead, including Lanius, Deverell's girlfriend Joy, and David Lynn's girlfriend Barbara Richardson. Ron Lanius' wife, Susan, was severely attacked, but survived. What James Cox is able to capture in his movie is an authentic... In the summer of 1977, the very week I turned 8, I was plucked from my home in the great city of Boston and transplanted to Los Angeles, smack dab in the middle of the quintessential suburban enclave of the San Fernando Valley. Now, a child's world is small, and I was the nascent pebble cast into the pond, but the ripples had yet to move outward in the concentric rings that would grow and widen until they became my reality, my own life experience. My father, then 33, had accepted a job that had taken us to the West Coast. We were a small family, and now it was just my mom, dad, and me. And there was Uncle Chuck, my mom's brother. In 1977, he was 25 and had been in LA for a couple of years working as an actor, along with his dancer-actress girlfriend, Wendy. He was the only family we had in Los Angeles, and we visited him regularly. Chuck and Wendy lived in a small apartment in Hollywood, just over the hill, as we Valley people refer to anything on the other side of the Santa Monica Mountains, the low range of hills that separates us from the rest of LA and the Pacific Ocean. There are several ways to get over the hill from the valley, but only one goes straight into the pulsing heart of Hollywood, Laurel Canyon Boulevard. So every vic and manic romp that kept me feeling as high and confused as the film's central characters, a gory he said, she said, Cox keeps us guessing just like his LA detectives Sam Nico and Louis Cruz. We don't know whom to believe, and frankly, I feel more comfortable not knowing. At least I have some plausible deniability in the whole thing. Now, Wonderland gang member David Lynn, played at his 80s biker best by Dylan McDermott, was not present the night his bros and his girl were beaten to death with lead pipes, and much of the first part of the movie goes to his take on the night in question. He knows it was Nash and that Holmes had set up the Wonderland gang, and we may even believe him until we hear Holmes' side of it. Sure, he was involved, but he certainly wasn't there during the murders, right? Perhaps the one believable version belongs to Sharon Holmes, John's estranged wife, played subtly and stoically by Lisa Kudrow. Did her husband show up at her house in the middle of that July night, disoriented in tears and covered in blood? Yeah, probably so. But to this day, the murders remain unsolved. Holmes was never proved to be there that night, and he was acquitted. 6 years later, he was dead from AIDS. Nash's trial ended in a hung jury, 11-1. Well, the RICO visit to Uncle Chuck's included a ride on this narrow canyon road. Observing from the back seat of my father's Oldsmobile prior to him becoming a Cadillac man, I would observe as we would wend and wind our way through the circuitous canyon, eventually hitting Sunset Boulevard at the bottom of the grade. We turn right and drive about a mile to Larrabee, and there was Chuck's apartment. A tiny one-bedroom off of Larrabee, tucked up in the Hollywood Hills, looking down onto the roof of the Whiskey A Go-Go. But as I said, a child's world is small, so how at 8 years old could I understand that I was moving through the aorta at the very heart of the 70s zeitgeist? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll surrounded me on every trip through the canyon, yet this was simply where my uncle lived with his woman and his Great Dane, and Laurel Canyon was just another street with some cool houses. Never mind that I was cruising by the homes once or currently occupied by legends such as Frank Zappa, Jim Morrison, the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, Joni Mitchell. Even Houdini was rumored to reside in a castle-like compound somewhere in the canyon's dark shadows. The ripples of my world had not yet come to know these names or faces, nor the many other ghosts that resided on the streets of the canyons. But I would wonder who lived up there. Who lived on these crooked storybook streets like Lookout Mountain, Crescent Drive, and Wonderland Ave. Wonderland. Now that is a good name for a street that snakes its way up into the secret recesses of the Hollywood Hills. And it also happens to serve as the titular avenue in director James Cox's accounting of the four-on-the-floor murders that took place on that very street in the summer of 1981. Not since the Manson murders had there been such a notorious canyon killing, both occurring in the Los Angeles hills on warm summer nights. But this time, our central figure was none other than Johnny Wad, a.k.a. John Holmes, a.k.a. the King of Porn. In Cox's 2003 movie, Val Kilmer plays Holmes at his sniveling, whining, doughy-eyed, dysregulated best. His glory days behind him, Holmes now exists on a steady diet of coke and sex with his underage enamored girlfriend Dawn as they eke out their volatile way through the hardscrabble streets of LA in the early 80s. And like all addicts and desperate people, Holmes eventually gets in too deep with the wrong crew. In this case, the Wonderland gang, the ramshackle residents of a rented townhouse located at 8763 Wonderland Avenue, high in the Hollywood Hills.